All right, y'all. Happy week 185. Let's talk about the Toronto real estate market. While I'm here in New York, that's Times Square right behind me, and people are looking at me all weird because rush hour is starting and I'm literally sitting on a police barricade making a video about Toronto real estate. Who cares about Toronto real estate anyway? We care about Toronto real estate, so that's why I got to bring this to you this week. So it's week 185, and as you'd imagine, the sentiment is not so strong out there right now. There's a lot of people that don't know what to do. There's a lot of people that have no clue what's going to happen with their real estate, with their whether they're going to be able to hold on to their property, and that anxiety is further fueled by creators out there who seem to be loving leaning in on people's misfortune. Every time I open TikTok, it's just some other talking dumbass going on about, oh, look at this investor losing their shirt. They just bought blah, 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 and here's how much they're losing. Like, it's just such a dumb way to live your life, and I hate that people lean in on people's misery like that and somehow find a way to blame agents. It's like, oh, see, that agent told you to buy, and now look at that. It's like such a low-hanging fruit, clickbaity bullshit, and I can't stand it. So hopefully you're watching this and not that, and if you are watching that, say something. Anyway, so what's going on in the Toronto real estate market right now? As you'd expect, first of all, sales have improved dramatically from last week. I was really, really worried. There were only 17 houses sold in the entire Toronto market last week. No, not last week, the week prior. And finally, we're back up to, not finally, but it's nice to see being back up into the 60s, which is lower than normal, but it's still way better than 17. So we're at 61. If you read the report, you'll see the actual number down there. What does concern me, however, are condos. I think we're finally getting to the point where condos are going to become a bigger problem for sellers, not for buyers, if you are a buyer still, if you're not paralyzed by what's going on out there. But right now we are adding about 2 to 3, maybe even 400 units to the market each week, when normally we'd be either pulling back or staying relatively balanced. Just remember, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, we were under 1,600 condos for sale in the urban communities of Toronto, and we're just crossed that 2,400 barrier right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we hit 3,000 units within the next 2 or 3 weeks, because there's so many people, especially investors, that, remember, like when you see an investor's unit on the market, it doesn't mean that they absolutely are underwater and they have to sell. A lot of these investors that are on the market are just panicking, and they are selling for really low numbers in some cases, and some of them are just pulling their properties off the market. So just because an investor puts a property on the market doesn't immediately mean that there's some sort of panic situation like some people would lead you to believe. So I think it's really important to not make those assumptions and understand that everybody has their own motivation for things. Like, we have a client right now who has a number of his investment condos on the market. Why does he have them on the market? He has them on the market because he has other use for those funds. He sees an opportunity somewhere else in the real estate sector, so he's not too concerned about what he might be leaving on the table right now. He's more concerned about the potential gain of what is available to him and other investors right now, as they're taking advantage of other panicked investors. So listen, make no mistake, there are people that are way underwater, super trouble, defaulted, power of sales, foreclosures, whatever you want to call them. They exist all over the place to the tune of, I don't even know the actual number. I don't really care what the number is. All I know is that the number of power of sale properties that are on the market right now relative to how many properties there are on the market and how many mortgage holders there are in general, it's an insignificant number, and Canada-wide. One that, is reported on sometimes, but not really all that effective in determining, what's going on in the market right now. It's not like we have a massive, across-the-board flood of power of sale bank-owned properties. And remember, power of sales aren't necessarily bank-owned, not yet. Power of sales are just the sale being forced by the bank because the mortgage holder is in default. The bank doesn't really own it. That seller, that homeowner can, until the very last minute, jump in and take their property back, even if there is a deal in place. So, which does happen. But anyway, what the hell was I even talking about? I don't even know. But condos are going to become a bit of a problem in I think the coming weeks. So if you do not have to sell, please don't. If you don't have another use for the funds, please don't. You're just going to be adding more listings to the market that doesn't really need them right now. Houses, on the other hand, I shouldn't say on the other hand like it's some sort of opposite story. Houses are also slow. Stuff that you would expect to just fly off the shelf is not flying right now. However, that doesn't mean there aren't multiple offers. So if you are a house buyer, you might come across multiple offers. And this story comes up all the time. Like, when you are when you are out there looking and buying and selling and doing all these things, and you see a property that's been on the market for like, let's say 100 days, and then you're like, oh sweet, let's go see it. 100 days, like the house, maybe we can negotiate a little bit. You go see it, you like the house, you make an offer, and all of a sudden a second offer appears in your head out of nowhere, and you think that listing agent is just making it up. That's really not the case. I mean, sometimes, just like in a market like this, when people are paralyzed, they're on the sidelines, they've seen this property, they're taking some time to think about it, they're not sure where the market's going, etc. And then all of a sudden they get a notification that there is an offer on this property. That triggers them into action as well, and it could result in another offer. Remember, whenever you make an offer on a property, if the listing agent is at all worth their salt, or whatever the saying is, they will notify everybody that has shown that there is an offer on the table. And that sometimes it triggers another offer. So it's not just some bullshit that the listing agent is making up. There are protections in place where we can verify where the offer is coming from, etc. So it's not that... what's the word? Nefarious? Is that? I don't really use that word that often. But anyway, so that could happen. So as a buyer, be prepared for those scenarios. But generally, you have a lot more time to think about a property before you get in there and you buy it. It's really not that much of a rush out there on most properties. But again, there are some that are going into multiple offers. That North Riverdale community seems to always be the one that goes against the way the rest of the market's going. So... anyway, so that's what's going on there. So if you're a condo buyer, you might have a lot more leverage coming up. We might have a lot more leverage right now. Depends on the type of property you're looking at, depends on the neighborhood you're looking at. But right now, investor friendly, like those entry-level condos that are like under 600 grand, there's a lot of opportunity on those right now. We've got a couple of those listings and they're pretty slow, I'm not going to lie. But we have a couple of the higher end units that are larger, something that you might move into if you downsize from a local house and do a condo, kind of like a retirement place for you, or you're an empty nester type thing and you want to move into that awesome low maintenance type of environment. Those ones are still doing well. So you're at like 1,000 square feet plus, and with a terrace especially, those are still doing well, and well in relative terms, well in terms of today's market. So there are some opportunities out there. There are some sellers still doing well. And honestly, I'm kind of discombobulated being out here in Times Square, so I'm not sure if any of this is making any sense to you guys at all. If you really want some sense made out of all this, make sure you are reading the article that is linked below. And if you need any specific insight onto your situation, like, I've got a house in Roncesvalles and I want to do this, let's talk about it. Like, we'll break down the net numbers so you understand what's going on. I'm not really interested in doing that here because everybody's situation is very, very different. So I can't just say, oh, you should all do this or you should all do that. There is no one-size-fits-all answer in this in the Toronto real estate market. There never really is. It feels really weird talking about Toronto real estate here in New York. And what's really even stranger is that I'm sitting here with like a tripod and like I'm up on these police blocks, literally in the middle of Times Square, and like people walking in front of the camera, and nobody is looking at me like I'm doing anything weird. And I think that's kind of neat. I don't know why I'm so self-conscious about this kind of stuff, but, why not? I'm doing my thing. Everybody's doing their thing. Who cares what anybody else thinks? You know what I mean? But anyway, so I'll be back in Toronto in a couple of days. I'm here to do a workshop. I'm getting certified as a guide for the Phil Jones body of work called Exactly What to Say, which is an amazing training. It's basically a new language to learn how to communicate way better. I'm going to use it as a training for our team, at the Spring team. If you are a team leader or a brokerage watching this, then I'm going to be creating a training program for brokerages and other teams. So let's reach out and talk about it. It's really effective stuff. I've seen it change the way my team, the Spring team, thinks about real estate. I've seen it change the way people communicate with their friends, their families, their clients. Overall, that's why I'm here. It's a fantastic program. But back to the whole Toronto real estate situation. If you are a buyer, you got a little bit more time to think about stuff. You should definitely not be maxing out on your purchase right now. Keep a little bit in the tank. You never know what's going to happen. Our rate's going to go up in October. Honestly, who the fuck knows? Yes, no, who knows? But does that make a difference in terms of what you need in terms of lifestyle? No. So if you can handle it, you've got a solid job, you've got a good budget, you've got, your pre-approval in place, your financing is all locked in, then go ahead and make that move. You know what I mean? As long as you leave something in the tank. But you are going to have to, take a little bit more time selling your property because stuff is not selling in 2 days with 17 offers like it was. And that's not normal, by the way. So what's happening out there right now is more normal than what was going on for the past 10 years in real estate. This kind of balance is not that crazy. I would just like to see a little bit more sales activity. But it's normal that we don't have it because there's uncertainty. Once we have certainty, things will speed up again. But does that mean that shit's just going to pop off all of a sudden and go crazy like some realtors are saying? Absolutely not. That's not the environment we're in right now. We're not in that free money environment of like early COVID. So we don't have banks just throwing money at people, allowing them to make all kinds of ridiculous offers. So that's just not an environment we're going to see again. So yeah, when rates hold and there is way more certainty about it holding long term, the market is not going to go crazy. It's not going to pop off. Like that stuff's not going to happen. Hey, good talk, buddy. Way to go. Yeah, let's do it. So this guy's just finally, somebody's heckling me. I love it. So at the end of the day, whoever you're listening to, just make sure they're not going on and talking about how the market's going to pop off once rates hold and there's more certainty, and that you should buy now because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You should buy now if it makes sense for you, not because some sort of market timing, day trading bullshit that somebody's trying to feed you. So that is all. Week 185. I'll see you next week in week 186. And in the meantime, let's start a conversation. I had some good views on the last video. I don't know why. Is it my face you guys liked? Let's keep that shit going. I like it. Adios.